Let's get this started. Thanks for coming. So she will start yelling in a minute. When she yells, we can yell back. If she's too loud, I try to speak up a little bit. This is about cybersecurity and enterprise threat detection. And I like to start with a few thoughts on cybersecurity. Do you think that your data is attractive for an attacker in your company? Yes? What would it cost to execute a crafted attack exactly for your organization? What do you think? $1 million? 500,000?
Look at this person. He came with you because I was thinking of you.
They want your data.
Coolest thing. You know what I get a lot of people asking? Can I take this home?
My information's all public record anyway.
No, your company's data. Who knows? So we examined one of the first industrial hacks against which was called Stuxnet. Who knows that? So Stuxnet was a cost approximately 5 million, a very targeted attack. Today, the costs for a cyber attack lowered dramatically. So when I want to attack an SAP system, I need the following ingredients. It would be, let's say, a week of programming work to write a crafted ABAP report, to send me data or to delete data or to stop a production site. 5 days. Let's say we have an expensive developer, $5,000. Next thing that I need would be a so-called zero-day attack against the network. I can go to the darknet and buy that for 50,000 off the shelf for any network device that you have in place. The next thing would be I launch a phishing campaign against your company. You can buy that for 20,000. Targeted to your company. One will send me your one SAP user and his password. Usually I need some on-premise intelligence, so someone who cleans the bathroom, for example, or a consultant or whoever, giving me some inside intelligence, and I need a lab to test my attack. And that sums up to $90,000. That's what I need today to develop a crafted, very dedicated attack against one of your SAP systems, to give you that background. So that's the financial burden of a professional attacker. And we very often compare security with a car. So that's a Rolls-Royce, very nice car. And it has not many security features built in that we know today. So you can say that there's something like highways, we have the police taking care, flashlights that catch you, we have whatever, but that does not protect you against when you have an accident that you go through the window. So there are many things to do on your end when you want to achieve protection. And there are, so we're doing this, I say, evangelism for security since 11 years now. That's my 11th time in Orlando, or where Sapphire was before, and in autumn in Las Vegas. So 11 years of preaching about SAP security. Eventually it's acknowledged. So when you listen to SAP itself, they say security is important. It's the DNA of the entire program. And we also see that there is something like SAP security notes. Who knows the pain of SAP security notes? Once per month you get them, but that's a clear sign of SAP is caring about security. Your task is to implement the security patches in time. If you don't do that, remember that a security patch contains the manual how to attack, because it describes what was broken. So once SAP publishes a patch, it's more or less public, and the bad people can read it and use that as a guide to attack one of your systems. So there are publicly known security breaches where attacks are going on against SAP organizations. Usually you don't read about that in the newspaper because nobody will say, hey, my SAP system was hacked. That is kept silent, and very often you never know that you are attacked. So that's the other thing. When we are doing penetration tests since 11 years, so we play the bad guy. You can hire us for playing an attacker with different skill sets. So from the outside, I playing a student, I play a professional attacker, whatever you want. And we see many things going on. So for example, we had a web shop of a manufacturing company, and they had an attack that was undetected for 1 year. We could see that in the logs, but nobody read the logs. So that's one thing. We had a backdoor in a financial reporting of an insurance in Switzerland, and that report, whenever it was executed, at least I think at least once per year, send out all of the financial data to a private Google Mail email address of an employee that quit the company 3 years ago. And he received all of the data by email every year or whenever that report was executed. We see that money is transferred through an SAP system without taking notice. We see that user accounts can be easily guessed, so standard passwords are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and they are replaced by A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Easy to guess, easy to brute force. And then according to FireEye, that's one of the leading intrusion detection system vendors, an attack is usually undetected for 146 days. So just to give you some basic data about that. And I don't want to scare you. I can do that. If you're interested in that, our booth is right next here, the orange thing. I can do some live hacking, showing things that how I can see or fingerprint an SAP system in the internet. I can do that today or tomorrow, whenever you come by. Our promises or our approach how to protect your organization against that is in 3 steps. The first step is you should to get an understanding of what the level of security is in your system. Even if you don't have a baseline, there are known bad things. A known bad thing is, for example, an SAP all-user in production. Not many people need that. A bad thing is a developer role in production. You don't want to have that. But we see that. Okay, we don't yell back. Okay. So there are many bad things that can go on, and the first step would be to make an assessment. Where are you according to best practices? I will have a word on where do you find best practices in a minute. So that's the first thing. Assess where you are and try to understand what risk are you willing to take. Do you want to get rid of SAP all privileges? Do you want to clean up? Or do you accept that risk? That's a conscious decision that you should make. And once you have made that, continue monitoring. Do that constantly to understand, do I make progress? Is it getting worse? It can get worse when you write code, when you add new systems, when you change the configuration, when you upgrade, when you move to HANA. So who is moving to HANA? Hey, come on. You plan to? You are? Do you know the SAP HANA security guide? No? So that's a source of a best practice that you should know and that you should use to benchmark your HANA implementation against. So just to give you an idea where to find a benchmark. SAP writes security guides, there are user group security guides, there are many publicly available best practice documents that you can use as a benchmark. When you assess every future change in configuration or coding or in a transport can be benchmarked against your standard, and you can make a decision, do I want this or not? Is it bad or good? So you have the chance to stay clean. Every future change should be a good change in terms of not introducing a backdoor or vulnerability. And then the other point in time is that you have a legacy, usually. Do you want to clean up or do you accept the risk? So that's our 3-step approach. Very simple, how to achieve a security baseline. And then in terms of benchmarks, there are the SAP security guides. So I was introduced as coming from Germany. So you know that we are very accurate in many things. So we have laws and rules and everything. And we have a Federal Office for Information Security that has a standard. We have the German-speaking user group that established an ERP audit guide that contains a lot of valuable information. And there are others, like the SAP baseline template, which is available for download when you open this OSS node. That can be used as a benchmark, and start from there. Start from easy-to-use templates and then go further. And this is the world from an SAP point of view, what SAP security means. So in the past 2 days, when I ask people, what does security mean for you? What's the number one answer? What do you think?
Protect from intrusion.
Protect from intrusion? No.
User security.
User security, that is translated to GRC and roles and authorizations, isn't it? So that's the number one focus. However, that's only one part of it, one part of that story. And I pick some of those icons here and give you an idea of what else is important. So an emergency concept. Are you prepared for an attack? Yes or no? Most people are not prepared for an attack. If you are not prepared for an attack, you can only pray to survive it. I really recommend of what are your assets and what do you do in case of an attack. Very good exercise. Another one is security configuration. I know hundreds of switches that you can turn on or off in an SAP system that can easily lead to a bypass in your security. So are you doing that? Is your basis team empowered to understand those switches? So that German user group thing is 180 pages long, which describes what you should do to protect the configuration of a system. You need to read that, 180 pages. Second, you need to understand it. Third, you need to apply that to each of your systems. Who can do that? Another very popular thing is communication security. So who is doing online banking? Everyone. Counter question, who is not doing online banking? So everyone is doing online banking. You expect online banking to be encrypted, that the bank uses a certificate and SSL as a protection level. Why don't you encrypt your RFC channels? Simple question. Why don't you protect the communication between your SAP systems? That's part of communication security. Custom code security. So we know by our experience that in 2,000 lines of code, there is one critical security weakness. Critical translates to when a hacker uses it, he owns your system. That's what I see as critical. 1 in 2,000 lines of code. On average, an SAP productive system has 2 million lines of code. How many weaknesses? 2,000. 2,000 potential entry points to an SAP system in the code that you or your suppliers has written. Maintenance of SAP code is something that I mentioned already. Apply the patch, apply it quickly. And other things like network security. It's whenever we see in a pen test an SAP landscape, many of them are not separated. It's one network, no segmentation, no firewall in place, 40 ports open to the outside, although you need only 4. So the cheapest and the oldest and most understood countermeasure, a firewall that we know for 20 or 30 years, is very often not applied to SAP environments. Operating system and database security. So we are here at the SUSE booth, one of the operating system vendors. You see Microsoft here, Red Hat has a booth somewhere. Your SAP system is running on an operating system that should be protected. Who is doing that? Are you applying the patches? Are you configuring the directories accordingly? Just questions. That's all. Everything is a part of those guidelines that I mentioned before. Is the database protected? What's the user, the super user password of the database? Is it the password written down in the manual? In most cases. So I know it. I know your password because it's standard. And many other things. So today this is called the Security Operations Map. In previous years it was called the Security Solution Map. However, I like the term Operations Map better because it's an operational task. And if you want to master security comprehensively, you should have an answer in many of those tiles. Maybe in the beginning, not in every one. Remember that circle. Start with an assessment. Start with a risk-based approach. What can be fixed in terms of risk or should be fixed immediately? And maybe as a second criteria, without much effort. And then start with that. And then go to the next level. In these slides, we can send the slides to you. There are notes for every single tile which is explained here. Since I have limited time here, I don't do that. I don't torture you with 20 slides, but for the sake of completeness, every tile is explained. Maybe one here. Enabling the logs is a good start. Having an idea which events are interesting for you is even better, because if you enable the logs, they will flood your people with hundreds and thousands of events that might not be relevant to you. So it's a good start, enable logging, and then fine-tune the events to those that are relevant to your business. We keep track with other security vendors of the top list of weaknesses that we see when we are doing pen tests, when we're doing security audits. And the first one is missing SAP security notes. So that can be a task for you. As a takeaway, if you take away only 3 things, focus on that. Think about security notes. Change the standard SAP user passwords, one of the biggest and most easy to exploit weaknesses. Quick win. And third, last but not least, that's something that I can show to you at our booth. If you have web-enabled applications, I can find them. And I'm a dumb guy. I'm not a real hacker. I can find them even. It's not rocket science to fingerprint an SAP system in the internet, and then when I find an SAP system in the internet, I usually get a logon page and I apply a standard user password and I'm in. Very easy. So if you have 3 takeaways, these are the takeaways for you. Maybe a word on transport security. I consider transports as a very nice way for software logistics. It's also one of the biggest backdoors in your SAP environment. Why is that? You probably have a transport management tool, Charm, TMS, Transport Manager or RevTrack or whatever. They help you to manage the process of a transport release. They don't look into the transport. The transport can contain anything. It can contain a USRO2 table entry. Marcus is a new SAP all user, can be part of a transport. It can contain customizing, coding, whatever, and nobody is checking that. Why? With a transport, you can get anything into your productive environment unchecked. Unless, maybe, hopefully, pray, a log is turned on and you will find something bad going on later. So make up your mind, when do you start to have a look into a transport? And by the way, that's part of non-SAP security standards too, to have a change management process in place. Detecting attacks. So when you have turned the logs on, thinking about filtering, there are two answers today. So SAP has an answer to detecting critical events too these days. It's called enterprise threat detection. Who knows that? Not many, some. So when you do everything right in staying clean, in protecting your environment, things can happen still. And you need to have a mechanism or a tool to detect that. And SAP's answer to that is ETD. That's the three-letter acronym that's why we love SAP, for 3 or 4 letter acronyms. So, and you might know that at the infrastructure level as a security incident and event management system, in short, SIEM. You probably have that. But from what we see in the wild is that those SIEM systems, ArcSight, Splunk, QRadar, to name a few, they don't understand SAP protocols and logs. That's the gap that ETD fills. So think of how, if you turn on logs, what are you doing with the logs, and whether you want to apply a technical solution to it to manage those alerts. Is a very popular growing trend that we see in the market, that through increased attacks, cheap attacks, $90,000 is not much, you want to know that you are attacked. And those are the instruments to see that. And also, those tools bridge a gap. Usually you have a SIEM system already. Technically, the systems don't understand SAP, and the IT security people don't know SAP either. So yesterday I had a conversation where I asked one of the guys, is security important for you? Yes. What do you do? We have a security officer, but he is not here. Why? He does not know what SAP is. So you can bridge the gap by having such a technology, speaking the same language as your IT department. We have an offering. So my business is not only talking, so we have solutions at our booth. In short, we can X-ray transports. That's one of our solutions. We can monitor custom code while you write it. And we can add a governance function before transport release. So checking all rules, is the code bad or not? And if it's bad, you need an approval by someone else. So all of a sudden, you can show, we have this bad code in production because of that reason. And we can also check the entire HANA, ABAP, or Java configuration by a mouse click. Sounds like voodoo, but it works. It's 11 years of field experience in tools. And that was the commercial jingle. If you want to learn more, be happy to be my guest at our booth. Questions? No? if you want to have an attack, $90,000, talk to me. I know how to do that. Thanks for your attention.
All right.